All right, well, it's midnight. It's after the Steelers game. It's after the Steelers are embarrassed at the hands of the Cleveland Browns. And wow, I can't remember, honestly, the last time that's ever occurred, even though the Browns kind of embarrassed themselves towards the end of that game. And this is your opportunity. I'm doing this live. Many of you might be in bed. You might be sleeping. You might have passed out after the game. So maybe this won't go anywhere. But either way, I'm going to rant, and maybe this will be a monologue show. Who knows? We'll see where this takes us. I'm Mike Asti, and this is the Steelers post-game live chat edition of Mic Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and SteelersNow.com. And whew, I don't think many of us saw this one coming. I mean, I talked about it a lot last week throughout my shows, including the post-game show after the Rams win at Heinz Field with Allen. I talked about it the week earlier on the post-game show after another Steelers victory. But those wins, those recent wins for the Steelers, they really made it evident to me that they were more lucky than good. And I got flack for saying it, but it was really, really true and became true and proven to be true in this game with the loss to Cleveland. Thursday Night Football on the road, I get it that it's a short week. I get that it's a problem. I get that NFL teams hate it. I get that maybe it's not necessarily fair, but it's not fair for either team. And the Browns managed to get the job done after a big win on Sunday and turned it around and keep the hot streak alive to kind of save and keep their season alive, even though they have a long road to go still. But so do now the Steelers, who allowed their defense to lead them the last few weeks. Their defense was saving them and really masking a lot of the problems in terms of the Steelers couldn't run the football to save their lives, and I get that it didn't include James Conner, Ramon Foster out of the lineup as well. Benny Snell didn't play. It was Jalen Samuels and company, and he did it a little bit as a pass catcher, but not really as a runner. Maybe you give them that excuse there, and they were supposed to be back in this game against the Browns. I get they were banged up in general, and I get that Mason Rudolph's in his second year, first really as a quarterback that's getting time, didn't play last year. First year as a starter, and there's going to be growing pains. And I actually thought he played better last week against the Rams in terms of a quicker release, making decisions faster, not letting plays become worse than they could be no matter what the situation, playing a little bit more like a veteran despite his inexperience. Yet you go to the Cleveland game, and it's back to old Mason from a few weeks prior, where he was once again taking too long with the football, once again didn't know what he was doing. The offense couldn't go anywhere, and the running game that now included James Conner and company, and maybe a better offensive line that's healthier, once again didn't get to really go anywhere, and James Conner ends up, and here it is, and it's kind of doomsday. James Conner ends up out with a shoulder injury, ends up leaving the game early on, and leads the whole discussion that I'll get to later in terms of if James Conner should have played in the game at all. And if the short week maybe should have let him rest even further, even though you desperately wanted James Conner back in the lineup for you and wanted some semblance of a running game. Either way, the Steelers are beat down, and there it is, 21-7, the Cleveland Browns with a victory. 3-point favorite on the Vegas line going in, and I almost bet in that game. I almost bet the game thinking the Steelers wouldn't lose to Cleveland. They always beat the Browns, no matter what's going on. And the Browns aren't that good. They got a big win over the Bills, but the Bills might be fool's gold, and Cleveland's been a dumpster fire in terms of making too many mistakes against teams like this. The Steelers, though, were the team that made the mistakes. Mason Rudolph, the quarterback that threw the interceptions. And the Steelers, the team that turned the football over. So instead of what it's been the last couple weeks, where Minkah Fitzpatrick and crew were converting turnovers and getting the football and making the running game not going anywhere not matter as much, making Mason Rudolph's mistakes not matter as much, make no semblance of an offense not matter as much, make field position being awful, and make the fact they had nothing from the return game, from punting or kickoff returns, not matter as much, because Minkah Fitzpatrick was creating turnovers every other play, it seemed. The defense was scoring as many points as the offense, and did that literally against the LA Rams, a good team, the defending NFC champion, were in the Super Bowl last year, despite maybe underachieving this year. And Yet the Steelers were really confident. They finally beat a good team. It was the biggest win of the year. They were above 500. They get this win. Then you figure they beat Cincinnati. They're 7-4. They're riding high. A relatively winnable schedule coming up. The Jets are on it. Yes, the Ravens are on it. But the Bengals here with Cleveland, who you still feel like you should beat, seem like a great situation for the Steelers. And yet, now it's a bit of doomsday because they looked awful. And as Mason Rudolph said, and Mason Rudolph said this, and we actually touched on it in last week's postgame show. Their defense continues to lead the Steelers. It did. The defense led the Steelers to the win over the Rams. But it was a bit of a fooling situation for Steeler fans. And Mason Rudolph knew this because Mason Rudolph said it to everybody. Okay, he made it clear that the defense was playing like the 85 Bears out there. He made the joke. They're playing like the 85 Bears. And I know I can't expect that every week. And we all knew that, but some of you didn't want to talk about it because you just wanted to be happy of the team winning. I get it, but it wasn't reality. This team allowed the defense to carry the load, and yes, that's won championships before with Trent Dilfer and the 2000 Ravens, the 85 Bears, of course, with Jim McMahon. They're average quarterbacks. Trent Dilfer was even less than average. But 2002 Buccaneers doing the same type of thing. But that's not the norm. And they most likely, and they all did actually, and even Rex Grossman when the Bears went to the Super Bowl in 2006, they were veteran quarterbacks who knew the system, who didn't make as many mistakes, even though they didn't do too much. Mason Rudolph made these mistakes. He's a young quarterback. And I'm going to get to this too in a minute. I'm not harping on the fact that I'm going to blame him because what can you do? And I don't think Devlin Hodges is the answer by any means either. But at the end of the day, the Steelers weren't good enough. They haven't really been good enough to be a winning team in recent weeks. The defense was playing out of their mind, which you never can expect to occur week after week, and you can't expect that to save you week after week. And the Steelers lose this to Cleveland, put themselves back to 500. I tweeted this. It really appears now the Baltimore Ravens got the division wrapped up, especially with the game in hand for the Steelers. So, again, I'm Mike Asti, and that was a little bit rant coming in, and I didn't even get to the Myles Garrett just asinity and his actions at the end of that game. And I guess the Steelers-Browns rivalry is back because the Browns have been so bad and so irrelevant. You can't have a rival with a team that's not in it ever. But even though they're in a roller coaster ride of a season, Baker Mayfield's swag, the talent that's now there, the fact they got a win, and the way that game closed, with Myles Garrett using his helmet as a weapon, hitting Mason Rudolph as his hands went in the air. He didn't know what the hell to do with the referees. And Tomlin, I'm sure as we're speaking, is unloading about that, as he's also very high up in terms of the NFL and rules committees, and he can't love that, but this is the same league that took forever to put down any punishment of consequence on Vontaze Burfict. But the Browns, much like the Bengals years ago, even while winning and even while they're good, they kind of unravel, and it cost the Bengals a playoff game they should have beat the Steelers in due to that. And maybe the same will happen to Cleveland. They do have to get there first. That won't be easy, but they have a win over the Steelers. They might have done more to ruin the Steelers' year than even help their own, since they still have an uphill battle. And Myles Garrett, I don't know if anyone's going to argue this, needs suspended for the rest of the year. I don't know beyond that, because he was a clown and they're not going to ruin a guy's life because of the play, even though there's no defending him. But the rest of the year for sure. I mean, that was just unnecessary, just insane, just losing your composure. And a veteran coach would just lay into him. I don't know what Freddie Kitchens will do. But regardless, again, I do see we have the live chat rolling here. Some people are on it. So we will talk. I will get to you in a second. Steelers 21-7, losing to the Cleveland Browns. Thursday night football. I get it, Thursday night football. But still, the Steelers, it's fair to both teams. It's fair to the Steelers. Steelers playing the Browns. It's in Cleveland, but not like it's going across the country. And both teams dealing with the short week. Every team deals with it. No excuses. No excuses for the Steelers as they lose to Cleveland. And now it really becomes a problem in terms of the rest of the season. It can be saved. I'm not saying the season is over or they should quit things. But this game was very indicative of what should have happened the last couple weeks in terms of the defense saving them with all those turnovers, creating all those turnovers, and points off turnovers that you can't expect to win with the offense this way. See what you guys got going on. They should have held James Conner out of this game. Play calling was not so good this game. I'll get to the Conner, then the play calling there. Okay, yeah. I you know what? I'm with you, and I said this a few weeks ago. I didn't have the do the screenshot. I was doing this kind of quick there. James Conner out with a shoulder injury, and you know, it's just so ridiculous because you can go through the channel, go through the mic drop section here, Pittsburgh Sports Live, go to SteelersNow.com, the Steelers Now section here. It's all there. I've done this before. I did a recent show on this in terms of I've defended Mike Tomlin for years in terms of a lot of Steeler fans act like he's a piece of crap and his resume is nothing and he's not had any success. And yes, he underachieved sometimes with a lot of that talent. But he also won championships, been to 2, consistent winner, well above 500, mostly in the playoff, division titles. It's hard to be too mad with that success. Many teams would love to have it, and only Belichick has really been more successful than him in that 10-year period. Very similar resume to Bill Cowher, going to probably be a Hall of Famer someday, certainly for the Steelers in their history. With all that said, Mike Tomlin's stubbornness to be this guy that loves the featured back. He is an old school coach, despite not being that old, loving the featured back. I remember asking him in a press conference a couple years ago, when I was still with the Trib, about, are you upset to even have to be dealing with this Le'Veon Bell situation? Because do you even know how to go about this? Is it easier to deal with having a featured back rather than a bunch of guys? And I knew that obviously it's easier for him. I was kind of trying to catch him into a rant, which he gave me, in terms of he wants the featured back. He wants one workhorse to ride it out. And that's not really the way of the NFL anymore. Todd Gurley is a workhorse back, but C.J. Anderson led the Rams through the playoffs last year and through the NFC crown and to the Super Bowl. When Todd Gurley was hurt, he rolled off his couch and did that. He rolled off his couch. Was fresh as a daisy and was doing it for Todd Gurley. The Eagles have won a championship with multiple backs. The Patriots have won multiple championships and been to multiple Super Bowls recently with multiple backs. The multiple back system is the way of the NFL right now. That's why Le'Veon Bell didn't get the money that he wanted, and that's why his career's kind of in the tubes, because riding one back and paying one back just isn't smart money in today's NFL. And you need more than one guy, because not only do they have a short shelf life, but even in the middle of seasons, and we're seeing this now with Conner, you can't expect any back really, but especially Conner, based on his career, to uphold himself through an entire year. And you need to have some security. The Steelers, yes, they draft Benny Snell, and he's also hurt, and maybe he could be a little bit of a pounder, but they haven't used that scenario at all, so what's the point? James Conner being out the last couple weeks certainly helped cripple the running game. So is Ramon Foster being out. That certainly hurt things as well. And I'm not to say that James Conner is setting the world on fire, having a Pro Bowl season like he did a year ago. But even last year, didn't get to 1,000 yards because of an injury, fumbled a lot. This year, slow start, fumbled, cost them the Niners game, got hurt then, and had the best game of his life. Had the best game of his career, 140-plus yards on the ground, 6 or so, I believe, per carry, even more than that, if the stat just trying to get off the top of my head. Against Miami, best game of his football life, really, ends up getting hurt in that game. But I said this in that show recently. This goes back to Tomlin's mishandling of the featured back, in which he got hurt late in that game when he shouldn't have been in there. He was trying to ground and pound with like the days of Jerome Bettis, but Conner's not Bettis at all. Conner's not been healthy, even going back to high school in Erie. And I don't mean cancer at Pitt. I'm talking about just injuries in general. He gets beat up a lot and can't handle the rigors of a full season. So instead of protecting him and trying to salvage this because you know how important the running game is, you play him late in that game and he then gets hurt. You lose him for several weeks. You win those games anyway because of Minkah Fitzpatrick and creating turnovers and scoring off turnovers and playing like the 85 Bears is the Steelers' defense, or was the Steelers' defense. They didn't have that great of a day against Cleveland, at least the secondary. And they weren't able to force those turnovers. So once they can't, you're in trouble. And then you rush Conner back. So you get him hurt because you played him too much and let him stay in a game that you already had won for whatever reason, and then you rush him back in the Cleveland game. I never thought, I was surprised as ever, that he was going to play in this game after Sunday. It's only a few days swing. It's traveling. It's Thursday Night Football. You're not really ready. The offense hadn't been playing well. I get you might want to rush him back to help the running game, but don't ruin your year by doing so. Be a mature head coach that's won a championship, because that's all true and does have a Hall of Fame resume. In terms of, you need Conner healthy for the long haul. You feel like you should have been able to beat the Browns with or without James Conner if you can beat the Rams, but of course you didn't. And I don't know if it'll change the outcome or not, but you lost anyway with them, so I wouldn't have played Conner, and it clearly showed he wasn't fully ready. If he wasn't fully ready, you don't rush him back. That appears to maybe be what happened in terms of rushing Conner back. You don't rush Conner back just to save the running game when you're the guy initially because you love the feature back that got him hurt from playing him too much in a game that was already won, and that was unnecessary. So 3-4 weeks now, it's been a complete mismanaging of James Conner by Mike Tomlin, and that's led to now, Conner, I'm imagining, is going to end up missing more time with the shoulder injury. I do want to go to bed at some point, but I guess I'm heated here. And again, my fan card's gone when I'm credentialed covering these teams, so I'm not going to lose my sleep because I want the Steelers to win. I know you guys are fans. It's the fact that this just didn't have to be this way, and this is a big deal in this game. And I debated whether I do a post-game show. Clearly, I'm here in a temporary home studios, not at the studios atop Market Square or near Market Square, atop one of the buildings in Market Square in downtown Pittsburgh. But just the fact that this I had to unleash because the Steelers deserve that right now, okay? And about the play calling, though, because that's the next one. About the play calling, and I know that the offensive coordinator is always the guy the Steelers fans love to beat up on. They did it with Todd Haley even when the offense was scoring points, and they did not lose in the playoffs that year to the Jaguars because of the offense, no matter what anybody says. And I get there was other issues with Todd Haley, so he was gone, and he was the scapegoat then. And Bruce Arians, before him, at times was hated before he left and ended up becoming beloved by Big Ben, etc. But he was not that popular with the Steelers. The offensive coordinator was always beat up on by Steeler fans. And you can go to the play calling. You can beat up on the OC all you want, and I'm not saying he had a good day. I'm not saying it's been a great year. Maybe he handcuffed Mason Rudolph earlier in the season too much. Didn't let David Hodges do anything. Ben being out, all these injuries, and here all the injuries. I mean, let's go through them. We know Conner, but also losing Juju out with a concussion. That's a big deal. Juju's not had a great season so far, obviously, but one of the reasons why is the Steelers they've yet to find a number 2 receiver, which I brought up before the season. And go back through Pittsburgh Sports Live, go back through the channel, go back through SteelersNow.com and the Steelers Talk section. I did shows on this before the year in terms of a big deal the Steelers needed to figure out and what could ruin the year. AB gone. You had to get rid of AB because of his drama. I get it. They should have done it before that and tried to get more for him. But losing AB would affect Juju more than anything because there wasn't a number 2 receiver. Now Juju would now be the one. Juju was the 2 before. It made it easier on Juju when AB got the double coverage. Now that double coverage goes to Juju. Somebody would have to step up to be in the number 2 to allow space and make it easier for Juju. James Washington, Moncrief clearly wasn't the guy despite the fans loving him so much and predicting Pro Bowl success. He's off the team. James Washington and him have chemistry. Him and Mason Rudolph have chemistry, but not really stepped up yet. He's been inconsistent throughout this year despite a few big plays. Deontay Johnson seemingly stepped up a few weeks ago, but then has dipped and now is also hurt. And we see going in the tent in that Cleveland game with blood all over his face. It was a damn Halloween-type scene out there, which is surprising with how the game finished. So the Steelers don't really have that number 2 guy ever figured out. It's hurting Juju. It's making it harder on Juju. And now Juju's hurt. Now Juju's out with a concussion. So if you lose Juju and Juju misses any time, then you need people that haven't yet stepped up as the number 2 to now somehow be a 1. And I actually saw a tweet from former Steeler, former NFL player Doran Dickerson. Got a couple calls with the Steelers, more I guess Texans, Patriots, but former NFLer Doran Dickerson, former Pitt All-American Doran Dickerson, who I co-hosted some shows on 93.7 The Fan with, saying the Steelers should sign Dez Bryant. And honestly, it's not crazy. I get it's the end of the year. I get he's maybe a malcontent, but now he's healthy after last year where he did get signed by the Saints. He was a productive player in the past. Maybe not as much as he was years ago as an All-Pro. The last few times he was in the NFL and kind of dipped in production while the Cowboys were okay with getting rid of him. But it took them a while until they made another trade with Amari Cooper to replace that production. And the Steelers desperately need receiver help. So much for the Kaepernick conversation. That's not going to happen. I would be shell-shocked if it did. And that's a whole nother show for another day, the fact that he's getting that weird pro day. And at this point, I don't know how anybody can convince me that they know for sure he would get it done as an NFL quarterback right now. He hasn't played in years. So it's not even about your political opinions. There's just no way to definitively know. And that's a gigantic risk to take. Aside from all of that, though, Dez Bryant doesn't have all that drama around him right now, despite some controversial tweets, or some fun-loving tweets, really. I don't mind following him occasionally. I go back and forth on it. I check in even when I don't follow. That's when you know it's a great Twitter account for Dez Bryant. But regardless, it's not ridiculous because the Steelers desperately need receiver help, especially if Juju misses time. And I'm not saying Dez Bryant can step in and become a Pro Bowler again, but they just need bodies. They just need guys that can get the football, that can run routes, that can learn an offense, that can do these things in a hurry. And maybe a veteran like Dez, who's been in the league a while and has been a former multiple-time Pro Bowler, maybe he's the type of guy that can do it. I don't think it'd be a risk that would hurt the team. Certainly not a big contract that he would be provided since he hasn't played in a year and a half and was coming off an injury. I wouldn't mind going to Dez because not having a number 2 has made it way tough on Juju. And now if you lose Juju, it's going to cripple things elsewhere offensively. And this kind of goes with the fact that maybe you can't just blame the play calling because of all these injuries. It is a young quarterback. There's mistakes going to be made, whether it's Rudolph or Hodges, and I'll get to that in a second too. Doesn't matter. That's hard to beat up on a coordinator in that situation, okay? I don't know if Bill Walsh would have turned that around offensively. I don't know with those players, with how they're playing, with all the injuries in that situation. I don't know what else you could do, honestly. I don't know what else they could have done, despite the fact the play calling was a bit to be desired at times. And honestly, even going back to earlier in the year when Rudolph had the handcuffs on after Ben got hurt, people forget this too. That early in Ben's career, when they went 15-1 and went to the AFC title game, and then the next year won the Super Bowl, when you compare Ben's early career to Rudolph, and people, Ben was so much better, we already knew he was a Hall of Famer then, and he did become a Hall of Famer, and we don't see that in Rudolph. Okay, maybe you don't see it in Rudolph. Okay, I don't know what your eye test is telling you. I'm not saying I do. However, their passer ratings are similar. Their stats are similar. Their level of play is similar. Now, Rudolph's made more mistakes, which can hurt the team, but Ben was not setting the world on fire those first 2 years. Ben was not an All-Pro. Ben was certainly not elite, and Ben was not near a Hall of Famer. There's nobody then that could tell you he guaranteed Ben would become a Hall of Famer who, for my money, is the best quarterback in Steelers history. No one can tell you that. Ben's won 2 rings. He's been to 3 Super Bowls, okay? 2 of those Super Bowls and 1 of those rings he earned as an elite quarterback leading the way. The first one in Super Bowl 40, he was on the bus. I don't mean Jerome Bettis leading the way either for that pun, but he was on the ride. He was riding along with a great veteran Steelers team that was knocking at the door for years, a great Steelers defense especially, kind of like this one, but more of a veteran team. And yes, they won a lot of games. He didn't make tons of mistakes. That's better than Rudolph. I'm not saying he didn't play better than Rudolph, but he wasn't a Hall of Famer then. It wasn't like he was throwing for 300, 400 passing yards every single game and 3 or 4 touchdowns. He did make mistakes, as young quarterbacks are going to do, and part of the reason why the turnovers weren't there with Ben at that point, and he was able to take care of the football so well and manage the game, he kind of was a game manager, is because the Steelers put the handcuffs on him, okay? He had the hand. This isn't for Dez Bryant, although it could be, but he had the handcuffs on him. Ben Roethlisberger was handcuffed those first 2 years during all the winning. So I don't really have a problem with the Steelers handcuffing Mason Rudolph early on. They eventually do need to open things up and should have by now, but once they do, he's made the mistakes. Maybe it's just true you can only go so far with a backup quarterback, which is what the Steelers have. All these injuries, and this is why I said this last week and tweeted this after the game. For all the flack Tomlin gets after all the drama, if the Steelers somehow would squeak in the playoffs after the offseason they had, with all these injuries, with 3 different quarterbacks playing this year and getting wins, and having a backup quarterback throughout most of the season, that's Coach of the Year material, even though now it doesn't look great after the Cleveland loss, but we'll see where things go from here. I just can't rip an offensive coordinator for that situation, honestly. It was a doomsday scenario. Mason Rudolph's not clearly going to be the guy next year if Ben's healthy. If Ben's healthy, he's going to start. That was the case anyway. And Mason Rudolph has his hiccups, but he is a young quarterback. It's hard to just crush the guy when he did look like he was getting better last week. And he's a young quarterback who's going to make those mistakes. And I'm going to go through the chat here. I do have something else to say in terms of Mason, because a lot of people out there are also saying that they wish Devlin Hodges would have started. Devlin Hodges won the job against the Chargers on the road with that win. The Devlin Hodges should be the guy now. That they were calling for Devlin Hodges in that Cleveland game. The duck calls were out. I saw it on Twitter. And guys, that's a bit absurd, honestly. A cheap shot by Myles, yeah. Myles should be gone for the rest of the year, yeah. Myles Garrett, completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. There's no way to argue that. And much like the Bengals, when they were good, when they had their heyday with Pac-Man Jones, Vontaze Burfict, Andy Dalton, A.J. Green, even Carson Palmer before and Ocho Cinco in that other era, the Bengals through that time frame under Marvin Lewis always were a mental basket case that would, whenever they could win a game or win a big game or that playoff game a few years ago, they would just unravel at the seams. And those penalties late in that playoff game cost them in a game they should have beat the Steelers. They really should have. Now, the Browns still win this. It's still a big win for them, despite the incident. But you're probably going to lose him for the rest of the year. You should lose him for the rest of the year. You're certainly going to lose him for significant games, and he's an integral player on your team. So if you're a Browns fan, don't be mad at the Steelers for egging it on, as I'm seeing some ridiculous tweets out there. If they were, it's gamesmanship and you shouldn't fall for it. You should be smart enough to not let a win get ruined when you unravel that ridiculously, or you're using your helmet as a weapon and hitting an opposing quarterback in a league that protects quarterbacks more than any other position. So he's gone. He has to be. It's a borderline assault felony that happened there on the field. If he did that on the street, he would be facing more than just missing some games, and the game checks maybe will do it for him. But who knows about next year? I'm sure he won't be done for his career. It'll just be the season. But that's what needs to happen. It does. It will hurt them. It takes something out of the win for sure for Cleveland. And Cleveland fans should be mad at him and should realize that it was ridiculous. And nobody should be defending it, quite frankly. So it's hard to say much more. It was asinine as ever. There's nothing else really to go on about. Steelers didn't come to play. It didn't look like it. I mean, honestly, from the jump, they didn't look good. But I don't know if I'm mixed with they didn't come to play, and it was the short layoff, and it was the road game, Thursday Night Football, which does suck and sometimes does garner upsets and doesn't favor the road team despite the close distance, a couple hours just to Cleveland from Pittsburgh. But it could also be that just the last few weeks, and this is what I said on the post-game show after the LA Rams game, in terms of they've been more lucky than good, and the defense continues to lead the Steelers. So the defense was leading the Steelers and making up for other issues based on creating turnovers, based on scoring points off turnovers. We talked about it on that show. The defense equaling the offense in turnovers and in points. It doesn't really matter maybe what the offense does, even though the offense needs to be way better, and wasn't against Cleveland that eventually became a problem in terms of the fruit of the labor for the opponent's defense playing so well against the Steelers, or else the Steelers' offense sucking so bad. It eventually got ripe and became a problem for Pittsburgh, and they got the loss. Whereas that offense needs to be better for you to win, needs to be better to win in the playoffs. You need some running game to open up things for the passing game. You need to really just be healthier. You need a number 2, but you need a number 1 first, and they might not have none of those right now with all the injuries for the Steelers. this, I don't know, it's worse with Connor or Juju or which one was worth losing and how long you're going to have Juju out. Connor, I said it and go back to the early portion of the show for this rant and a show a while ago on Pittsburgh Sports Live. There it is on Twitter there, at PGH Sports Live on Twitter. On Pittsburgh Sports Live and SteelersNow.com in terms of Tomlin's handling of Connor and that he shouldn't have played as long in the Miami game. He shouldn't have got hurt there, pounds him too much. He's not a guy that can play a full season. And on honesty, as much as I went on and on about how Tomlin's mishandled Connor, and he has, the love of the featured back has been a problem. Go back again and listen to the beginning of this show, as well as other shows through the channel to hear more about that rant. But it also may come to just be a fact that James Conner isn't a featured back in the NFL. That you shouldn't pound a featured back. That's not the way of the world anymore in the National Football League. But regardless, if you must, or just in general, James Conner's not a featured back. He's not going to be a big contract back, whether it's short or long term. He's not anyone you can rely on. He's not going to be a future Hall of Fame back for you to join the ranks of Franco Harris and Jerome Bettis and Rocky Blyer. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. James Conner is a great, wonderful story. A local kid, does it big, ends up the emotional night on draft night, getting drafted by his semi-hometown team, playing high school in Erie, from the Erie area, so still near Western PA, playing at Pitt, gets to play his home games in the same stadium he played in college. Wonderful story, and I didn't even get to the fact that he conquered cancer. I've lost people close to me, including my late father, to cancer. We all have a cancer story in our lives. It's a horrible disease, and the fact that he got over cancer, dealt with it at a young age, was able to conquer it, was able to persevere, more power to him. It's phenomenal. A great story and reason for everybody to root for the man. Reason for everyone to root for him. I'm rooting for him. WVU alum, but I'm thrilled to death that James Conner, a Pitt guy, is on that Steeler team, and I'm rooting for him. However, you got to call a spade and be truthful. It's clear now with his injury history, the way he's going to be used, the way Tomlin wants to use a guy, he can't fit into that system. And he's just not healthy enough. He's injury prone and can't handle the featured back life that Tomlin wants to employ in a featured back that even bothered Le'Veon Bell at a time. And it's just not going to happen for James Conner. So maybe it's time to get somebody else. Maybe it's time to switch things up. I don't know. Maybe not just use one guy. Maybe his health will then be better, or the future being a question. It doesn't appear that James Conner is going to be that guy. And the quicker the Steelers realize it, the sooner the Steelers know that James Conner is not the featured back that they thought maybe he could be after surprisingly having a great year to replace Le'Veon Bell last year, the quicker they can try to address that position. And what sucks, and I've defended this forever too, you can find this through the channel and SteelersNow.com, with the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade, and I'm not in any way complaining on that trade because it was a great one. It could still save this season. He's had an historic run so far with the Steelers in terms of doing things that hasn't been done with the Steelers since the early 80s and even going back to the early 1930s of the franchise with some of the marks he's set so forth with turnovers and points off turnovers and turnovers in back-to-back weeks. And been a great player, and he's only in his second year, and he's a great player at Alabama. He has the NFL pedigree under Saban. He's on a small, younger, rookie-like deal, so you have him locked up for years without really anything against the cap. I get all that, and that's why I defended that trade then. And it's a need position. The secondary was a need position for you. But you did address it a little bit with Steven Nelson and Joe Hayden having something left in the tank. To the point that it's been better in general prior to the Cleveland game, with or without Minkah Fitzpatrick, even though he's creating all those turnovers and helping lead to wins and making it better than it actually has really been based on what he's done. And you're not going to find a better player to help your secondary impacting it right away in next year's draft than what Minkah Fitzpatrick's doing now. So all of that made that trade wonderful and is a positive. But they also traded a first-round pick, which may be as much as they need to help in the secondary. And if that was going to be what you would draft next year, then you wouldn't get anybody better than Minkah, and the trade made sense. However, if your season doesn't lead you into the playoffs this year, you might need another quarterback for your future if you don't think it's Mason. You shouldn't think it's Devlin Hodges because, and I'll do this now, he the whole situation of people thinking he should have played instead of Mason is just ludicrous and asinine. He played okay against the Chargers. They won, but they put the handcuffs on him too. He'd make the same mistakes Mason Rudolph's making. It would be a similar system, similar handcuffs. Nothing would be better. Nothing in that game showed he was better than Mason Rudolph's been. So that makes no sense. But he's not the guy either. Maybe he's not Mason. Ben's not going to play forever, even though he threw the most yards of his career last year, but also the most picks. So he needed to be better this year anyway when he was entering the season for them to be better and ends up getting hurt. Who knows how much longer he goes. He starts next year, but it's a question mark for the future. They might have needed that first-round pick for a quarterback. They might need that first-round pick for a running back again because Connor doesn't appear to be a featured back and appear to be the answer. So now you lose that. So that's the only negative. As great as Minka's been and how much he can help your future as well when it wasn't just about now, sucks to lose that first-round pick for Pittsburgh if this season does not land itself in the playoffs, which you thought would happen when they win over Cleveland, Cincinnati, etc., get well above 500. Maybe you're a wild card and can't fight for the division still, but you're right in there with an easy schedule. Losing this game kind of changes that a little bit and makes it tougher. How about all those drop passes? That was horrible and paralyzed our momentum because we had none. Well, yeah, it's hard to paralyze momentum when you didn't have any, but yeah, Aaron Autry. Drop passes, chances, all about drop passes. The Steelers had tons of drop passes. They've had drop passes all year. Juju dropped a big pass last week against the Rams. Yes, they won again. They did win the game. But as we talked about on that post-game show last week, still on the channel, the defense led the way. They should have lost if it wasn't for the defense. The defense, as Mason Rudolph joked, was playing like the 85 Bears, and they can't rely on it to do that every week. Well, that became true. They can't rely on it to do it every week, and if it doesn't do that, they aren't going to get wins. That was evident here in the big loss to the Cleveland Browns, where they dominate you 21-7. 21-7 on the road to Cleveland. You wouldn't have thought it, okay? Wouldn't have thought it. A big bet on Cleveland would have helped you out there cash-wise on the Vegas line. But the point of it is that everything that could have went wrong for the Steelers went wrong, okay? Everything that could have went wrong. And now it's about rebounding. And a lot of the weaknesses the Steelers have had the last few weeks get exposed against Cleveland because the defense doesn't play like the 85 Bears and doesn't all of a sudden be all world and create those turnovers and score off of turnovers. So if you can't rely on the defense to do that every week, which reasonably you can't, obviously, the offense needs to be better, and it hasn't been, and it finally cost the Steelers a game. But again, I don't know if it can be fixed because you still have a quarterback in there. Most teams with a backup wouldn't be able to win. Miraculous they're really even in it. And all the injuries this team has. But the drop passes are there, and Juju's not had a good year. So the injury's going to suck. You need to have him in there as even a decoy, if nothing else. He garners the double coverage that AB used to garner. But no one step up as the number two. Him being out would make it tougher. Then somebody would have to be a number one who's not even been good as a number two yet. They're probably not going to sign Dez, even though it makes sense bringing in the X-Man, Dez Bryant. Something needs to be done here. Maybe a risk-taking situation for half the year wouldn't be bad for a short deal with low money because you need something in terms of offensive talent, offensive weapons, and especially receiver help based on what's going on. But Juju, the guy that had a lot of pressure coming into this year, just hasn't been good enough. And he has to make a name for himself and has to figure it out somehow, handling those double teams. Otherwise, what we're going to see from this year, and what he's kind of proving as much as everybody loves him so much, maybe he's a legit number two, and he's a great number two with all those yards those first 2 years, the historic rookie season, Randy Moss-like. Randy Moss became a one and kept on going as a one, handling the double coverage and getting into space and getting open despite the double coverage. Juju's not able to do that. He was able to benefit from AB being there and taking it, facing the weaker side, facing single coverage. Not the case now with the double coverage and the best corner on him. We will see. But right now, the criticism on Juju can be that he's maybe a number two and not a number one receiver, not a truly elite receiver that he thought he was coming into the year. Right now, that's what he's showing us because it is a rough year for him. Again, can you even believe that? 21-7, Cleveland. Hard to believe, really. Hey, Mike, love your show, man. Yeah, Cecil, you've been in most of these live chats. I do appreciate it. I do, and just to let you guys know also, we don't want to get into any profane language or any of that. I mean, I'm not gonna, put a sainthood crown on myself. There's no halo above my head, but YouTube and the way we have the settings, we got it pretty tight, pretty strict. So that's why, Aaron, some of your comments aren't being shown if you're wondering. Now we have nobody next week against the Bengals, 0-9. Yeah, again, I mean, the Bengals should be they're a must win, but should be a guaranteed win. The Steelers roughed them up earlier in the year, and the Bengals are one of the worst teams the NFL's ever seen. I mean, they're certainly the worst team this year. I think Miami separated things with a closer game against Pittsburgh, already winning a game. Bengals, none of that. I mean, they're awful. And if I'm AJ Green, I never want to play for that team. They're already looking at a rookie quarterback now, and it's a record-settingly horrible year in terms of a first-year head coach and going so far into the season before getting a win. Although, Jimmy Johnson with the 2 rings with the Cowboys and Tom Landry with his 2 rings and 5 Super Bowl appearances and the success of the Cowboys back then, they had similar slides and similar horrible runs those first years as a head coach. So maybe this one he can hang his hat on, but the cupboard's pretty bare in Cincinnati. I don't know about them turning it around for a while. So that should be a win. Yeah, but what does that win show you? Say the Steelers turn it on and kill the Bengals and the offense rolls, like it did against Miami, like it did against Cincinnati already. Does that prove anything to you? Does that really make you happy, BK, Aaron? Does that really do it, Cecil? Because when they face good teams or even teams with talent who maybe aren't as good as they should have been, Cleveland, the Rams, Seattle earlier in the year, on the road to the Niners, obviously we know the Patriots game, Baltimore despite the swapping of quarterbacks due to injury, they lose. Or they play a close game and win thanks to tons of turnovers on the defense. They beat the Rams thanks to ton of turnovers on the defense. You take away points off turnovers, you take off even one of those picks from Fitzpatrick, they don't win that game. And they had some help from the referees as well. Connor is too soft. Well, I mean, again, I'm not going to call a guy who beat cancer soft. I'm not saying he's soft. He did come into the season like a rock. I know he trained tons in training camp. He tried to build his body to be more of a bulkier back because that wasn't the case before. And he's also not the fastest guy in the world, so you're not going to be Reggie Bush or be that elusive like Bell was. You need to have maybe some strength on him. If Tomlin wants to do the featured back thing, which I'm kind of annoyed by, but is the case, and what he normally rides, but it got Connor hurt this year. Played him too long against Miami, got him hurt late there, missed him in those weeks. They were able to win anyway, but now losing him here when he probably rushes them back too soon. But I think all of this maybe is also evident, and a little aside, regardless of what Tomlin does, because he's never going to change, is that Connor just can't hold up. He's not a featured back and cannot hold up. And I'm not calling the man soft, but he just can't hold up as a featured back. That just seems to be the case. Myles Garrett suspended for life. Well, as much as I would love that to be the case, and I would not in any way cry a river for him if that occurs, Vontaze Burfict got suspended for the entire year this year for, his 6th offense over the last few years? I mean, the NFL Players Association would have tons of recourse if they suspend Myles Garrett for life or give him the Donald Sterling treatment. Yes, it was egregious. Yes, it was awful. Yes, it was ridiculous, but it still was in the heat and passion, emotion of the game, of the moment. It was dumb. Don't get me wrong, but you suspend him for the rest of the year like Burfict. There's not a career history like you had with Burfict. There's no way in the world they can do more than the year when they gave that punishment to Burfict with a litany of a resume of buffoonery, basically. So that's not going to happen, but no one's going to be upset if it does because he just was a clown. It was just stupid. I agree Mike Tomlin runs these back from the ground. Yeah, Tomlin has a Hall of Fame resume. He gets disrespected often. Similar mark as Cowher, and if Cowher coached in social media age, who knows how much he'd get ripped apart, especially during those lean years with Cordell Stewart and all that off-the-field drama, too. They had years they missed the playoffs. Tomlin had a couple, but he usually didn't last year, and the year after the Super Bowl, but they don't usually miss the playoffs. They usually have winning seasons, at least 500. They're usually a team that's a contender, even if they don't win the championship. They've been to 2 Super Bowls with him. They have won one, even though it was years ago. But look at a lot of great coaches. Andy Reid right now coaching, still looking to get his first ring, and only being in one through his whole career, and it's been 15 years ago. So It's hard to get there. It's hard to win it. He has done it. He has gone through multiple playoff runs, AFC title game, regardless. It's not easy. And remember, he's doing this in the Bill Belichick era. But with all that said, the challenge is the clock management. A lot of the fact that he does run these backs on the ground, has an old school mentality. It does maybe lend credence to the conversation. And I've been saying this for a while. They talked about it in the game. Troy Aikman went on, and Joe Buck. Steelers have had 3 head coaches in the decades upon decades under the Rooney family, whereas the Browns have had 3 head coaches what seems like 3 years, and basically it was. And how continuity is good, and that's why there's been so much success around the Steelers and at least one championship over all these different decades. And I get it, okay? But they're never going to fire Tomlin. They just won't do it. The Steelers don't fire head coaches, especially not head coaches that still win, especially not head coaches that have won a championship. He would need to go 2-14 for like 2 years in a row. But in the offseason, they didn't re-sign him for 2 more years. There only was 1. That's different than normal. And he was annoyed by that comment and that question. Maybe something is there. Him and Ben maybe lined up to leave at the same time. Whenever Ben retires, he wants to go elsewhere. He wants to leave and walk away, either retire or go coach somewhere else. Maybe this year does it. Maybe I'm sure Ben's going to want to play next year. I'm sure of that. And he's going to be the starter if he's healthy. Maybe he won't be healthy, though. Maybe he'll get hurt again. He is older. Who knows? Maybe he also will suck and they want to put Rudolph in just to see the future if next year is not going anywhere. So who knows? A lot of that's a question mark. We only know maybe week 1 next year in terms of who's the quarterback. But I will also say that maybe it's a time now where Tomlin, if this season doesn't land in the playoffs and doesn't land him having a Coach of the Year opportunity because he somehow gets them into the postseason, maybe games like this ruin that for him, where he just wants to leave. He wants a new challenge. He wants to go to the Redskins, kind of go near where his son's going to college at Maryland, no longer at Pitt. That type of thing. Maybe Tomlin just wants to agree to be gone. He'll never be fired. They wouldn't do that to a legacy guy with them. But maybe he just kind of wants to agree to part ways, or maybe even take a break for a year or 2, like coaches have done. Who knows? Okay? Maybe it's time that the tenure just closes because maybe it's just rough for one guy to be in one place for too long in this day and age. Maybe his expiration date is now as Steelers head coach, but they're not going to fire him though. So, especially with this season kind of having been saved, although it's not saved for me unless they squeak into the playoffs. But with a backup, with a third string starting, with all the injuries, if they didn't trade for Minka, imagine where this would be. Mason was way off target. Yeah, he was. He didn't have a good game. He had a better game against the Rams. He was worse the week before. He's been a roller coaster ride, but he's a young backup quarterback with his first year's experience. When Ben went down in all reality, despite things being saved for a little bit and kind of fooling you, that pretty much probably ended the year. And you can't expect too much more from Mason Rudolph. But let me ask you this. Do you really believe Devlin Hodges wouldn't be doing the same thing, wouldn't be making the same mistakes, wouldn't have been the same issue and problem for the Steelers the last few weeks, and maybe they wouldn't have won anyway because of the defense, and it would have been the same? He played okay against the Chargers, but it wasn't like he set the world on fire for people that somehow all of a sudden want him to be the guy or say he should have been the guy all along. I'm going to keep looking here, but probably close this out. Steelers 8-8. Yeah, it could be, and that might squeak in the playoffs, even though I don't think so. 9-7 is what I thought would be their record as the season went on. I thought this would be a win to get you to the 9-7, and they would lay an egg some other game they should win, maybe to the Jets or something weird like that. 8-8, I don't know if it does it, but this is a weaker AFC, whereas the Patriots are elite. The Chargers aren't who they were supposed to be. The Chiefs have been exposed. Mahomes has been hurt. The Ravens look really, really good, but there's still some weaknesses there. Maybe Lamar Jackson wins the MVP, but also he's got a lot of those stats against bad teams, and the good teams he's not played as well in, so that could eventually be a problem into the playoffs. You don't know. That style, I don't believe, will be long-term success, so I don't know if it goes beyond this year or beyond 2 or 3, 4 more years with this level of success. It just has never throughout NFL history led you to a long 10-plus year career in terms of Vic, and I know he had his dogfighting issues that ended that kind of in the middle, but RG3 and Russell Wilson's not as much of a runner. He's more of a passer, despite some kind of getting confused by that. We'll see. The Broncos not good. The Jets not good. The Bills are okay. I don't buy them as much as others, and they lost to Cleveland. The Cleveland's still an average team despite the win over Pittsburgh. Jacksonville's not that good. They're obviously, the Texans are okay, but Watt being out really hurts them. The Colts are okay, but the Steelers beat them. And that was the game 2 weeks ago, even though the Steelers didn't play all that well. Their defense helped steal that game as well. Minka Fitzpatrick stealing that game for them as well. And then the Colts follow up and lose to Miami. So they kind of ruined their own season a little bit, even though they really should have beat Pittsburgh. So the Raiders, John Gruden might be coach of the year for what he dealt with Antonio Brown if they somehow squeak a wild card out of it. And that's a possibility. With the conference relatively being weak, maybe the Steelers and Raiders or the Steelers and Bills somehow win these two wild card spots, because I do believe the division's now over and gone to the Ravens, regardless of that second game. They already have the game in hand now and probably going to win this weekend. So it's rough. It's a rough go for the Steelers. They're not out of it yet. But all the injuries, all the mess that's been going on this year, the roller coaster ride that's been this year, relying on the defense so much, the offense struggling so much, even with all the injuries and just poor play all the way around, it all came to fruition in this Cleveland game. Whereas nothing went well, everything that could go wrong went wrong, and now the Steelers are in a whole heap of trouble. They are, as they try to salvage this season. Duck is average. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there and kind of close it with that one. He is average. I mean, that's not a knock on him. He's a third-string quarterback, was a fourth-string quarterback coming into the year, was off the team, was on the practice squad. That was seemingly a good thing for him at the time. Then got on the roster, got to start a game, Duck Mania. It was cool. I was tweeting as well. But he would be just as poor as Mason Rudolph, would probably be worse. There's nothing he's done that made him even a glimmer of better than Mason Rudolph in terms of anybody watching who has a keen eye for football. And he played okay in that Chargers game. Good enough to win 130-some yards passing, didn't even get to 200. Didn't make the mistakes that Rudolph's making now, but was more handcuffed and couldn't make those mistakes. And maybe they would keep doing that with him in there. That would help the team. But he's not a better quarterback than Mason Rudolph. He's not proven that in any way. And I don't think anything would be different in terms of winning thanks to the defense, losing this game if he was in there. It would be the same. So people calling for Devlin Hodges to be the savior is just ridiculous. What I'm going to do, though, is close things out now. I got to go to bed. We're already into the next day, and we're getting into where there's a single-digit number in front there in the morning. So I do got to go to work tomorrow, and do got to get up here, do got to keep this coverage alive here as we go post-game. We go next day in the dreary Pittsburgh weather now, as we're already early into winter this year, earlier than we've been. Kind of upsets me. But the Steelers, they lose. And they lose handily in pretty embarrassing fashion, and it could have been worse, honestly. Some mistakes by Baker Mayfield with the Browns, and that could even have been worse. 14-0 at halftime, or 14-7. And then the Steelers kind of look like they're coming back for a while. The Browns get that one touchdown to kind of secure it, keep the 2-touchdown lead, and then go crazy with Myles Garrett's ridiculousness at the end. But regardless, they get the win. They were the better team. They played better. They jumped out on them early. They got the big play to Baker to OBJ that they've been waiting for weeks. Landry played well, helped to move the chains. Defensively, they played well, but also Mason Rudolph in the offense did not play well at all. And they leave the game not only with a loss, but James Conner played too much against Miami after they already had the win locked up, got hurt there, shouldn't have been, misses those games, they lose the running game, they haven't been able to get it back, it crushes the team offensively, they win anyway thanks to Minka and the defense, but now they lose him probably for more, they lose him in that game, and probably rushed him back to play that game against the Browns, which was a disaster decision if that's what it was. And then you lose Juju too with the concussion. Who knows the future there? All the coverage will be SteelersNow.com. We might have this reports in terms of this news coming out while I'm on the air here, so I'm not checking in while I'm doing this show. But Juju with the concussion leaves the game, doesn't come back. In a game that was close to the time, so him coming back would have helped the team. He hasn't been able to fill in for AB at all. He's had a rough year. He's okay when he's winning, that's fine, but now they lose. And they can't find the number 2 to help him with the double coverage. He can't deal with the double coverage that AB dealt with, and now they might not even have a number 1. So the offense is in disarray, to say the least. They lose the game. Everything that could have went wrong goes wrong for the Steelers, and they lose more than just the game with how things go against the Browns. Had to get all that out, had to unleash a little bit, and I was happy that some of you joined me. I didn't think it would happen after midnight on a late one. And I risked my sleep that I probably won't get any of now for you. So hopefully you guys appreciate it, you the people. But regardless, make sure you hit up the family of networks, PittsburghSportsNow.com, Pittsburgh Hockey Now, Pittsburgh Soccer Now, WVSportsNow.com, one of our newest members, covering the Mountaineers there and all the West Virginia sports scene, a part of the Now Network under the umbrella, the brother site of Pittsburgh Sports Now. And, of course, SteelersNow.com, giving you Steelers coverage all season long, no matter how good, bad, ugly, or asinine it gets. Make sure to hit us up on Twitter, at PGH Sports Live on Twitter, also at PGH Steelers Now. I don't have the graphic, but at PGH Sports Live on Twitter, and also at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter. Find us on Facebook, Pittsburgh Sports Live on Facebook, Steelers Now on Facebook, and most importantly of all else, because if you don't want to have to worry about following us on Twitter, what you should do, because I'm an entertaining follow, and we got a lot of great minds, entertainment, and fun, and analysis, and reporting going on in terms of everybody that you could follow in the network. But here it is. Click on the subscribe button. Make it easier for us to get the content to you. Click on the subscribe button there. That's the graphic that's most important. Right below the video, click on the subscribe button. Then you don't have to worry about following us, because you will get an instant notification whenever I do these shows, whenever I do any type of shows, whenever we put anything up, whether it be a post-game video, whether it be a press conference, whether it be something with a player, whether it be one of these shows, whether it be anything at all, it's a video, you get a notification instantly when you click subscribe. And I'll actually, you need to search Pittsburgh Sports Live on YouTube, and then here it is again. Love how it, just kind of finds itself there on the video, but click subscribe there. Click on the subscribe button. Help us get the content to you. Easiest. Get that out of there now. There it is. The dissipating. The leaving, kind of dissolving from the screen. A quick exit. I just love it. I don't know why. At Mike Asti 11 on Twitter as well, to follow me at Mike Asti 11 on Twitter. Steelers lose. It wasn't good. It was bad, and really, it ended ugly, even though the ugliness and the way it ended, thanks to Myles Garrett's actions, as asinine as that was, not necessarily all on the Steelers. But the Browns do win the game nonetheless. The Steelers season does end up being rougher. The hill to climb is now steeper, and we're going to be there with you, again, throughout the Now Network, but SteelersNow.com is where to find the material, where to find all the coverage, the news, notes, the analysis, all the game day action. And Pittsburgh Sports Live is where to get shows like this, where to be at the channel that I run, and where to get everything else in terms of video content. So subscribe. We would appreciate it. I'm going to go to bed now. I'm going to take a drink of water, a swig of pineapple juice, as I've been able to unleash here. Hopefully you were able to as well. And if you didn't hear, again, find me at MikeOsti11 on Twitter. You may have been sleeping. I understand. I wish I was as well, but I stay up for you guys. So hopefully you appreciate it. It was bad. It was bad for the Steelers. I don't think anyone saw that coming. And really, can you even remember the last time the Cleveland Browns dominated the Pittsburgh Steelers? Just in general? I really can't. But it happened. It happened this year.